Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started here. So, as we know, Bank of America has proposed some new signage for the location down on Carroll. And Lorraine had a chance to go down to, the HPC earlier this week, and there were some valid points that were brought up about the signage, mainly by the architects. I guess there was 3 of them. Right.
Yeah.
And that recording was sent out and disseminated in an email so that we can listen to what their comments were. And one of the striking ones was that, essentially, the architects are not in agreement with the signage that they're proposing right now. Like, it's just, a lot of it is just based off of aesthetics. Others have mentioned that the signage is just too large. It exceeds the, 30-inch.
Our criteria
Yeah.
exceeds our criteria for
Right.
signs, the height of signs.
Right.
Both of
And
them.
and it might be bordering too close to the top of the building as well when all is said and done with it. So I guess the purpose of this meeting is just want to kind of go over those comments. We want to make sure that we formulate our own strong response that's sort of consistent with what was brought up at that meeting, so that we can have sort of a united front with them on that stance in order to have the most effective change with this, because Bank of America didn't send a representative that day, and so it got kicked to the 26th, basically. So this is a good opportunity for us to kind of strike while the iron's hot and try to get our comments and opinions incorporated into this change with the building. So with that, I'm just going to go ahead and I guess I'm going to give the mic over to...
Let me ask a couple questions before we
Yeah.
get started.
Sure.
Last time we were here, we talked about the cover-up piece on
Yes.
the
Yeah.
original. Where does that stand?
Can I respond to that?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's really nowhere, because they're not doing anything to the front facade, and there's no signage proposed to be put there, and there is no way we can ask them to do restoration. There's just simply no way. And so that's the end of that. What, though, I think you should think about with respect to the beauty of the front facade, and it is a primary facade, but so is the one to the east across from Willow. That is also a primary facade. And the building was designed to be appreciated from both sides. I mean, there's quite a lot of money expended on the limestone building and the ornate parapet, and so I honestly don't understand why we have a sign on the east facade, a huge thing, why that ever was allowed, because it is a primary facade when you think about it. And one of the architects made a comment actually related to that, and how she would prefer to see it on the canopy, a small sign on the canopy rather than on the parapet, in other words, because she felt the huge sign wasn't necessary there because it's mostly foot traffic and very, very slow car traffic, which makes quite a lot of sense. And so a more diminutive sign that was placed actually on the ATM canopy was what she favored. She did not care about the western side, which is the all brick side, which, a sign could be there. I think she may have even meant the proposed sign could be there. She didn't care about that facade, but she did not want it on the primary facade, as it sounded. And the thing that all the architects focused on was the problem with the white background. They found that a horrible issue with compatibility, and it was very insightful actually to listen to their deliberations. I think I typed out some. I transcribed to the best of my ability, but I recognized they were quite right in that concern. One architect brought up how it felt like it was encroaching up the parapet with that. Another one just felt it was popping out in a very contemporary way. The architect who recommended the signage over the ATM canopy felt that did not like the white background, felt it was very shiny. It would be a huge distraction. They were united in that, and the chair was also united in that. The two commissioners who are not architects did not agree, and for various reasons, but they seem to not have a problem with the white background. But in my opinion, it really informed me enormously listening to that insightful discussion about how incompatible that white background was. And they varied maybe in, do you use the letters? They're very contemporary, just use the letters. But they were unanimous that sign design in which the white background is integral was just not what they wanted, what they thought was compatible. And I would have to agree, because then we're sort of thinking, well, how do we redesign the sign? Do we take away, do we just keep the lettering and all of that? And, the issue before us is really to talk about that sign with the white background. And I thought about that today, and
So how did they leave, how did HPC leave it? They voted to
They voted,
Kick the
well,
can?
they didn't, they voted to, I think, if you watch it, listen to it, they were clearly concerned also about it exceeding the height, our 30-inch height and all of that. And I think they were, Rebecca Ballo, who's the superintendent, or the supervisor of the department, basically said, if you're on your way to a denial, we need to consider some things. The applicant wasn't there. And I think what they wanted to do was to have a continuance to get a decision maker to come in with appropriate elevations and alternative designs and talk to them, but not the sign person, but a decision maker at Bank of America, which is really what we had hoped would happen, right? When we basically said, hey, tell us what's going on in other districts and and we can see how the sign should be modified, can be modified. And so we were thinking of modifying the signs, but we had no context, and they never gave it to us. And so we had to scramble to find a few examples, but there's got to be plenty out there. But the important takeaway on that, I think, is that the company has the ability to work in a regulated historic district and make people happy. And that means it's not using necessarily its design out of the can. It's developing a site-specific design for, for a regulated historic district,
so
which we are.
Just so I understand
So they
what
didn't-
happened.
yeah.
Right? So they didn't approve it,
They did not approve it.
but,
No.
and they
They
told
continued,
them-
they voted to continue it, the
Okay.
discussion,
Okay.
which then
So
that's.
they neither approved nor denied it.
Right,
They could come
they're-
back and
which I have-
potentially approve it,
Which is extreme, I'm sorry.
right? They could potentially
They
approve it.
could potentially approve it, but
conversation
I will
number two.
say it was a 4-2 vote going in the other direction, so.
It's going towards a denial.
I would say no. If you listen to their comments, they were very critical of that existing proposal.
And why do you think that they didn't just deny it? Why did they do a
Because I
continuance?
think that within the regulatory framework, and it's hard, hard to speak for them, but because they're dealing with the Bank of America, who could appeal this decision, I think they wanted to, and the seriousness then of denial, because nobody likes to deny something, right? I think the feeling was, let's bring the person in, and that option for denial is still on the table. the week of 2/26. So they can either approve, they can either approve with conditions, which could be extreme conditions, or could deny. So that is waiting to happen. That's why I think it's so important.
And their
we're meeting.
request was, is there anything that they put down in writing, like the way we do when there's a letter at the end of it, or is this just a continuum, so it's just conversation?
No,
and we
there's
don't
a
write
staff
anything?
report. We have the staff report, but there's there's no, I mean, you can listen to their whole deliberation. It's quite public. You can, and.
Right, but there isn't a summation
No.
that is an official
No.
recordation of what a decision
No,
is on
but
the thing.
they're bringing, it's a continuance. So they voted to have a
Okay.
continuance,
And
technically.
And what did they ask for Bank of America to do in this continuance? Did they ask for a new design, or just a new presentation,
I
or
think
both?
when you listen to the comments, and I really urge you guys to do that if you haven't done that, they were talking about bringing in a decision maker from Bank of America that we needed better graphics, alternatives, and I think they really wanted to have a discussion with the decision maker about improving the design or seriously changing it. And I guess they were looking to see, because it's a more constructive thing, if they could, but you have to have the applicant there. No one showed up for Bank of America, not even the sign person showed up. So I was the only one speaking on our behalf, and, and so I have never been through a hearing, and I'm sure they may have them occasionally, where there's a continuance like this. It was quite interesting, because we get the benefit of their insights, because there was a discussion, and I'm actually very grateful for that, because I recognized how incompatible this was. Now, when you think about it on a French neoclassical style building, and the importance of the architecture locally, that article we found from 1927, we need to forward that to the commission so that they appreciate what an amazing resource this is here. And it is an outstanding resource, but it's got quite a lot of history. So I think that,
Did they ask us to do anything?
Oh, no. No. And so I think that, it seemed to me that based on all of the new information we had and realized, the height exceeding our guidelines, the difficulties with the existing proposed sign, which is what we have to evaluate with the white background, whether you like the font or not, on the blue it still comes with that white background that is very big. And so, and I think that in understanding the importance of our resource from that 1927 newspaper article made me wonder why ever anyone put a sign ever on the east facade, which is a very important facade, and that one architect had a wonderful suggestion. However, we cannot compel, they cannot compel, we can't compel anybody, but the HPC can't compel the removal of that sign. It would be wonderful if they would work with us on that, but that's the HPC can't make them take the existing sign on that side down. One architect he thought it was actually better, more compatible than what they were proposing in many respects. And so he had a very, very visceral reaction to the inappropriateness of the sign. And I don't know if we want to read some of the comments into the record or
Just a
not.
couple more, and then I'll be done.
Yeah, no.
So when they presented to us, and we produced the letter,
Right.
right, which Roz has in front of her.
Right,
We denied their application, correct?
we did.
Did we actually deny it, Roz?
We voted to disapprove the application with the following comments, and then we listed 4 particular things.
Okay, okay.
So we did disapprove.
So is there,
Okay.
is there something, and we can go through the bullet points so that we're all aware of what those comments were
Right.
that the disapproval is based on. But is there something in that disapproval that is lacking, or is there new information? What is the outcome of our discussion
I
tonight?
think, I guess I would say that the standard for disapproval is compatibility, and we didn't really talk about that very much. We really wanted to see, we didn't kind of like it, we wanted to see historic district designs, or designs they've done in historic district, and wanted them to come and speak with us. And I don't know if the deliberation would come across upon listening to it as, as I would feel now after where we are with all this additional information that we know that they can do better in historic districts, that we, that how the architects felt that white background was absolutely so terrible.
Mhm.
And, do we want to say anything about the canopy, having a sign over the canopy instead, or not? I don't know if we want to comment on that, or if we just want to say, re-echo that this is incompatible at this juncture, and we, looking at the height of the sign, and do it in a, more, we have a lot of reasons now where we can feel very strongly about it. I don't know. Roz,
May I ask,
do you have?
given the continuance, do you, and I was just checking if the Historic Preservation Commission agenda packet had been posted yet, and it has not. Is it possible Bank of America will come back next week with a revised application?
I'm sorry, would you say, how'd you say they come back with
Is it possible Bank of America will come back with a revised application next week?
Well, that would be lovely if that happened, but
Except they would still need to come back through us if it has
yes,
significant
they would.
changes.
Yes, they would, I think, yeah.
Right.
And
What will happen if they don't show again on the 26th?
if they do not show, the commission has to vote either for approval with changes, or deny. And, so I think they never like to do deny. And so they were looking for perhaps a way to have a conversation that may or may not happen. And so we may be back to this exact same place. And it's, I just simply don't know. I can just.
So if it's useful, I could read aloud again
Let's do
the
that.
points we made, and
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
maybe just zero in on things we might want to add.
Right.
So the board voted to disapprove the application as submitted with the following comments. 1, the sign should be made of historically appropriate materials. 2, the sign should be monochromatic. 3, any lighting for the signage should be a warm lighting temperature. 4, installation needs to reuse existing alterations to the stone. And the last was a request that Bank of America come back with examples of what they've done in other historic
Right.
districts.
And I think
So
when I
to
look
me,
at.
and let me
Oh,
hear if
yeah.
anybody disagrees. To me, we flatly refused their application for their signage that they were proposing.
Right, but,
I mean, we picked
Yeah.
apart almost every piece of it and said, nope, 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 nope. And let's see other examples of signage that you've done on
Right.
this type of building, because what you've shown us is no good. That's how and I wasn't at the meeting, so I'm just listening to
Right.
those. That's what I get from that. Is
when
there
I,
something else that we need?
yeah,
Yeah.
I think there kind of is, in a way, because when I hear those, it's sort of commenting around the edges, and it's not commenting upon the height problem. It's not the overwhelming nature of it, the compatibility of it with the French neoclassical design. It's talking about lighting, it's talking about, and wanting more information, essentially. So we could do more of a detailed design review. I don't feel necessarily that we did the kind of design review that the architects did when they looked at it, if you with that. And I think that, we are more informed now, and do we want to have more input based on the information we have learned, and reaffirm that the design is not a compatible design, and we don't feel it's compatible with the building. The building is historically very important.
Well, what does that do? I mean, if we're just going to parrot what they said at HPC,
No.
is that what we're doing?
No, it has to be our opinion. We're not parroting it at all. And that's the thing that,
Because to me, they've made those statements.
Right.
We've made one set of statements.
Do we-
that
but do we-
disapproved it. They've made another set of statements
Right.
that's different from our set of statements, but you seem to be in agreement with, and I don't disagree with anything I've heard
Well-
so far. So we've got two different tacts at
right.
essentially a disapproval. They voted to continue, but it was essentially a disapproval of the thing. What else do you feel is needed?
I think that we have two different sets of issues, but I think that in the end, I don't believe we have ever commented on the compatibility of the sign in an architectural sense, which is what is the key issue here. So we're not, the lighting of it and all of that. I mean, nor did we raise the height issue as an important issue, that it violates our height guidelines. And I think that should be in any kind of, subsequent review. I think
Okay.
that
So
we.
do we have the ability to amend that letter in kind of just on our own here?
Yeah.
I think we could amend, or we could do a additional.
Yeah, I mean.
As a supplemental, yeah.
Roz, can we look at it as, we have more information, we know it exceeds our height guidelines than we had when we deliberated, that, we found other examples of very modest signage on other buildings, and we know that they can do these things in historic districts. We have found that newspaper article that really documented and needs to get submitted into the record. And I honestly don't believe that our disapproval centered more on, in my opinion, Nick, it was more, come back and talk to us because you're not ready, because we want to see other designs, right? And so, but what do we think about this design that's in front of us? Because this design, whether we like it or not, is going on its own track. And that's what they have to evaluate, that design with the white background. And so we don't really say that in our sentences. I don't see that. And to me, that's a compelling, in preservation, that's a very compelling thing to think of. And so, do we agree? Do we agree?
It's a box, right? We say the white background, that's what we're
Right.
talking about.
Yes,
It's a
the box,
box-style sign.
right.
So we want to say that the box-style signage is incompatible with the architecture of the building.
And and they made a big deal about the white background, which I see as also a problem, because that was, yes, the box style,
Right.
the white background. And
that's one point.
the
And then
height-
the height is
the height
in
is another-
violation of the
right,
the
right.
whatever.
And are you taking that out of the FAB code?
It's out
Good.
of our guidelines, and in fact, I can even, our
The
sign-
design guidelines?
our signage guidelines, yes, for Takoma Park, I can give you the page. And,
And it's not really compatible for the area either because of the foot traffic and slow moving traffic there as well.
Yeah.
But I think.
Well, the thing to be careful of is, and I'm just getting devil's advocate, the picture I saw of the bank in Georgetown is on a two-story building.
Right.
So it's a small sign, but it's a very small building as well. So a giant sign would look totally ridiculous. This building is large. So
Yeah.
they're going to have an expectation that the signage be larger than the signage on that Georgetown building. You know?
If
So
you-
we
I had
can't
a
just
chance.
say, we
Right.
can't look at them with this expectation that they can write Bank of America on the canopy above the ATM, and that'll do it for signage for the whole building.
Well, I had a chance to stop by that Bank of America in Georgetown just this weekend, and they removed all the signage off of that building. There's nothing that says Bank of America other than the ATM, and right above the ATM, I took a photo of it. They're fixing to put in a new sign there as well. So they removed all the original signage that was there, and the wires are just exposed. And my guess is that they're trying to maybe incorporate some sort of hybrid, or maybe the exact same signage that they're trying to put up here because they're rebranding them. I mean, I worked by Andrews and I saw the Bank of America out there with the new signage, and it is bright, it's large, it's big, it's bold, it does its job.
I mean, I think
It's
the
marketing.
most compelling thing is that the box-style signage is incompatible
Right.
with the architecture. If it's pin-mounted letters, some version of pin-mounted letters, right, out of a material that's a metal that's complementary, that's potential, and that can be large.
you're thinking, well,
You know,
if
larger
we're
than
comfortable with
on
it
the
being
canopy,
on the
but
parapet.
that's an example
Yeah.
of a signage type that could get there. The box, what we're saying is the box-style signage is just a non-starter.
Mm-hmm.
It's completely architecturally incompatible. And I think that echoes what you heard, H.
Right, and
see.
particularly the background. But I also heard the comment that, this sign on the primary facade is inappropriate, especially on the tabulature up there, which is very decorative architecturally. It's meant to, is that the appropriate place for a sign for pedestrian traffic and slow-moving cars? So can it be a lower sign somewhere else that could be devised? We don't have the ability to make that happen. What's before us now is the sign. This sign, I think, with the box sign, with the white background that was just mentioned over and over again, and I started to see and understand how overwhelming that would be, and I'm very grateful, actually, for those insights, because I don't think we address design as a major issue here, and so were to go to appeal, I think, they had answers for all of our, did you see in the staff report, there were answers for all of our concerns. And I don't,
There were responses. I skimmed it.
There were
It was-
responses,
It was
right.
nonsense. I mean, it was just
But of
making
course-
up responses to
Yeah.
things. It wasn't really addressing the concerns. You could tell.
yeah.
So really, I didn't feel it was worth even,
Well, they said they would try
Looking at it
to
very
fill the
hard.
holes, but they wouldn't fill them all, and that's their answer. But there's no bullet there for this box sign is incompatible on a Beaux-Arts style, which happens to be an outstanding resource in the Takoma Park Historic District of enormous historic importance. And by the way, here's the newspaper, and here's the article on this, which can be given to the HPC and the other side. And, I think what's lacking in the first letter is not hitting on the problems of the design of the
Right.
signage,
So
Nick.
we've got the one, which
So-
is the box. We've got two, which is the height.
Right,
What else do we need to address? Because what we're doing is we're putting together the amendment to this letter.
Right.
And then
Right.
we're going to vote on it.
right.
I think the other important item is removing the cover up on top of the building. And I know that's something that we technically can address, but I think we still should try to speak towards that. I mean, I think that's sort of the bedrock of what we're here for. And in my opinion, it is covering up our history. Because we found that original picture. I didn't know what was under there before, and I was kind of kicking around last month, it could say Takoma Park, elementary school or something like that, and it wouldn't be appropriate. But we found that original
Right.
photo there, and it says Takoma Park Bank, and I think that's a really significant piece of the building as well. And I'm not sure who covered it up, when, what bank did it, but I think this is our opportunity now to address it. It would be our only opportunity, maybe ever in our lifetimes. While this is all being addressed, and it definitely needs to be listed on there just to see what sticks.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
I mean, I get the reasons why, but I think if you're wanting to amend the letter, I think that's, we made
Yeah.
a big point last time we met on how important we thought the removal of that piece was, even to the extent of accepting other
Right.
pieces of their application as a trade-off
Exactly.
to getting rid of that piece. That's how strongly we felt about it. So I would think we would want to put that on the letter, even if we know it's a foregone conclusion that for whatever procedural reasons, it'll never be touched.
Right.
Let's get
Right.
it on there.
Right.
We could frame it, the HPC can do nothing about that. That's not within their power to do. We could think of it as however, additional things that, maybe we want to talk to Bank of America and find ways to do this. The HPC cannot do this, Nick. I mean, they just cannot. So,
Well, if they have if the point of this or the hope of this is to get someone with more decision-making
Right.
authority, more executive
We could-
capacity than the hired signage person,
right,
Right.
having this on the list of items to talk about, that's someone who you could say, listen,
Right.
we have this concern, and maybe you can work to an understanding on it that gets it taken off, even though
Right.
per HPC or whatever, you couldn't do it through that way, but
It just-
having the guy there and talking to him.
It just dawned on me, I don't even know if the
Yeah.
HPC is aware that the sign is covered up, and if that has ever been communicated to them.
there's nothing,
Uh,
it doesn't matter.
No.
There's nothing they can do about it. Unless the person who covered it up without a permit. That was done so long ago, I don't even know who did that cover-up of the sign, whether it was done with a permit or without a permit. But now, there have been so many banks there, we just simply don't know who covered up the name. And so, it's,
Yeah.
from a regulatory process, and Ann, you can jump in, I mean, I think you would agree that they can't just take on, they cannot force restoration on an applicant. They cannot do it. And as much as some of them dislike that eastern sign by where Willow is, they cannot compel them to take that sign off. So even if they decide to leave the existing sign there, which some of the architects felt was better than what they were proposing, they left it there. I mean, the commission cannot compel them to take that old sign down, and Ann is nodding, because that's the way it works. And so
Right,
we
but
have
we
to
can still
give,
ask
if we
them
give
to do
them,
it.
yeah.
I'm not arguing that the
Yeah.
HPC can't do anything.
But we
I'm
need
just
to
saying
indicate-
We should put on our list of, we've worked out 3
Right.
items now.
And we
then
should
the question is, do we have a 4th item? What else do we want to, I mean, we've talked about this a lot, so I don't think.
Yeah, I just wanted
we
to
need
add.
keep going with it. What's the
can
next
we
thing?
can we use strong verbiage in that? Like, can we call it defacement? Can we call it vandalism? When they're covering up these original,
I would recommend against that, because I don't know the reason why. It might have been a bank, they can't legally leave a bank. I don't know what the reason was for covering it up, and we just simply don't know that. But honestly, it's a historical name, and I agree with you. I'd like to find a way to restore it. I just know the HPC is not that vehicle. And so,
Okay.
in this project, nor do I think they would ever allow a sign on the front facade. And I personally would, and I don't know how you all feel about it, but if we're going to have a wish list, I would like to see that, the pediment free of signage, and some more diminutive and creative signage using the ATM or something, that isn't harmful considered. But that's, again, not something the HPC can do. But if we want to have a second little category of how we feel that this resource is so important historically, and it was meant to, be appreciated as a thing of beauty, that parapet. But I think the most important thing we can do now is, after considering all these things, the discussion, we can be informed by these things. We're not, and decide whether we agree. I was really interested in the architectural discussion, and that really informed how I feel about that box sign in a way I hadn't thought about before, because we were waiting to get other plans in to see what they do in historic districts. But so I don't feel that any of us paid close enough attention to the box sign, because we said, show us what you do in historic districts so we can modify this. That was the primary, show us for the design. We're not, we're not ready yet.
We've got the box sign on the list.
You know what I'm saying?
We've got the height on the list.
Yeah.
We've got taking the obscurement of the bank off of the front on the list. What else do we need to put on the list?
Do we throw the bargaining chip in there, saying something to the effect of, hey, remove the sign that's covering up the original chisel marking in there and put up the new sign? Is this something that we
not on
can-
the front.
Well, not on the front,
Yeah.
but,
Yeah.
whatever they're proposing,
Yeah.
like you mentioned earlier, can we do a trade-off, an olive branch approach, as you will?
I wouldn't write it down.
We
but I would-
we
I
are,
would
this
just
is
have
for the
that as-
HPC.
But I would put it on the list so that
Okay.
it's an item that anyone can read and say, oh yeah, that thing. Yeah, what about it? Why don't you take that off?
Right, okay. And can we also maybe suggest retaining the original signage that's already there? Do we have a problem with the signage that's already there? If this is all becomes a moot in the end, are we okay with the signage that's still there? Or do we want to make that a battleground as well?
I think,
I would volunteer no, because that starts to set a precedent for
Yeah.
that type of signage, which
Okay.
we're saying is really incompatible.
It's
The signage
on-
they have is better
yeah.
than the signage they're proposing, but they're two of a kind, really.
right.
And we're looking for something that's different than either one. So I would stay silent on
Okay.
that.
I would, because it's a primary facade, and it's how it's treated. I think the chair, when you listen to her comments, was very interesting. She observed that some people talk about whether the signage is better or worse. She said it really is a moot point, because in her opinion, what was on there now was not compatible. And actually, when she said that, I thought, that's really right, It's kind of said with clarity. So, I would like to see, if we're going to have a wish list, but I want to make sure the HPC understands that we understand they can't do these things, because we are an educated kind of advisory group, and we don't want them saying, but we can't do this, And so somehow, however we write this, our vision for the future with this, or is to, I'm saying, Roz, if you have some ideas.
Well, it's, in retrospect, it seems to me that what the board could have done was say, you need to come back to us. Not have done a complete review with a thumbs up, thumbs down, but said, we need more information, and we won't
Right.
consider this a completed review until you come back with examples of how you handle it in other historic districts.
Right.
So that's 20/20 hindsight.
Yeah.
But I have 3 points. Let me
Okay.
just read them. We can
Yeah.
refine them and then see if there's something else.
All
So
right.
would we want to keep the same language of disapproving the application?
Absolutely.
I mean, I'm sort of putting together a resolution,
Yes,
but
and the
so,
reason can be incompatibility with the
So-
architecture but go ahead.
so what the first point would be, that the box-style signage is architecturally incompatible with the building, the box-style signage with the white background
Yes.
is architecturally incompatible with the building. 2 is that the height of the sign violates the Takoma Park design guidelines. Is that right?
Say that again.
The
to-
height,
Yes, the height of the sign, of the
Violates-
proposed sign
mhm,
violates our 30-inch maximum. So the,
What is the height?
I don't have it in front of me.
It's like 40.
yeah, so the,
Six.
yeah, wait, let me, so the,
So we can, you and I, Lorraine, can work
Yeah.
on this in the morning for the
yes,
details.
yes, the inches, yeah, it's 3, yeah, one of them is 3 feet 6 3/4 inches, yeah.
Right.
And
And then the third point would be to, I used your language, to remove the obscurement of the sign at the top of the Carroll Avenue facade that reads Takoma Park Bank.
And I would like whoever did that to repair the holes. If we're going to do to do repair, this
Right.
is a wish list,
Right.
removing the sign
Is it
and
limestone?
repairing the holes.
Is it a limestone? So
But
I'm going to
how-
say repair the limestone. And I would like to say that we make that request as part of the signage package and rebranding, because it is the vestige of an old sign. So it seems to me like they're asking for new signage on the Willow Avenue side and the alley side. I'm going to use
Right.
that instead of east and
Right,
west.
right.
But as part of a signage package, it seems like we maybe strengthen our request by saying, we recognize you want to redo all of this because you're rebranding, so clean up the old stuff.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's strong.
The one
Okay.
commissioner felt, one of the architects said she didn't care about the sign on the western side. If it was a big sign there, because that was the secondary and you don't really see it. It's not, there's no
Right.
parapet there. It's, so she said, in summation, I'm fine with a larger sign there, but I'm not fine with the sign on the east elevation, and I prefer the ATM as the location for a Bank of America sign.
So those are the three we've talked about.
Yeah.
Is there agreement among the board about additional points you'd want to add?
There's 3. Cover it.
I think
No.
we should add, if I might suggest, should we say, stress the importance of this outstanding.
I was going to do that.
Yeah, I
Mhm.
think, and have that newspaper article there, that outstanding, our only Beaux-Arts, example of Beaux-Arts architecture, very grand architecture.
I can do the letter with attachments and include the 1927 articles.
Yes.
Should I include the Georgetown example? It sounds like they're replacing that one.
I would
Or the
just,
Concord example?
I think that it's enough to know that they can,
Do something else.
and it is, I don't know if that's another point we want to bring up. It is clear that Bank of America will work within regulated historic districts.
But the HPC didn't see those. We just saw those, right?
What
The other examples.
Those examples, they saw them the
Oh, they
night
did?
I handed them in,
Oh,
and they showed
okay.
them up on the
Okay, I didn't
board.
know that.
I think that was one of the things that, they were considering as well, that there's the possibility for not out of the box,
So we don't have to attach them.
Okay.
We've seen them.
Okay, so I'll
Yeah,
just
no, they
attach
have Dan should have those.
Okay.
the 1927 articles.
Yeah, I would do the 1927 article. I would make a point, we might want to say that it is apparent that they will modify their designs within regulated historic districts.
Well, that's what HPC does. They
Right.
hold that
No,
authority.
but sovereign, that's sovereign. It's clear to us that, do we need to say that?
You mean Bank of America?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that Bank of America will work together, will work to modify, will modify existing designs within regulated historic districts. I mean, we have found,
and do
they
you have a
never
better
told us they
perspective
did
on that?
this.
I mean,
Well, I thought we already addressed, I mean, so in our first letter, we asked for examples.
Yeah, we say, what are you
And then
doing?
you showed examples.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah, but we
you
had
think
to
we got
find
it
them.
covered?
They didn't give
no,
them to us.
I know you found,
Yeah.
they didn't even send a representative to the meeting, but I mean, it seems like now it's been brought to their attention. They will work, they can
Yeah.
work within historic districts and
Right.
can make modifications. I mean, the problem is
Right.
they're not sending a representative, they're not sending someone, you know, with power to make these changes. But-
Right.
But it sounds like they have that now.
Okay.
I just
So
don't want them
it's-
to come to the meeting and try to say, well, this is how they answered in our staff report. They said, when we said we want to see your other signs in historic districts, see how the signage can be modified, they responded, Bank of America only recently rolled out the image in the submittal. Unfortunately, we do not have examples of the new brand image in alternative formats. That was the answer.
That's the
That was the
HPC
answer.
staff
That was,
answer.
we can only do this,
Right.
is what they were saying. And that's why we have found alternative information that they can do other things in regulated historic districts. And I don't know if we want that to be based on information, how we set up this thing, but
Well, I could
don't know,
include a
Russ.
reference to the February 12th meeting where the HPC saw that.
Right.
I mean, maybe that
Right.
would be,
It's clear, right, we could, it was shown in the February 12th meeting that they can have design alternatives in regulated historic districts.
okay.
Yeah.
Is the board ready to do a vote on a resolution?
Yeah?
Yes.
Do you want me to?
Do we want to
Put the whole thing together.
Can I ask you one question, because we're all tired? This, when we start to get into the wish list, can we find a way to, in addition, you know, our goals for this building are to remove ultimately see this happen, you know, so that it doesn't read like we're telling the HPC, take the signage off the front, you know, the covering off the front, take the sign down. They can't. So I don't know how to,
Well, are we talking to the
How
owner
would
of
we
the
show
building, or
that?
are we talking to the HPC?
I think-
HPC?
We're talking to the HPC.
we're talking to the HPC.
Yeah.
That's the problem. See, we're not writing a second letter to Bank of America, which would be great. I mean, in essence, so what could happen in a case like this? One architect didn't want that signage up there, didn't want that new signage up there, she didn't like the signage, and she wanted it on the ATM. What could happen is they could leave the old signage up and maybe put a small sign on the ATM. That could be, they
Well,
could
if it were-
decide.
If it were me, I understand your sensitivity to not wanting to go in front of the HPC and have them shoot you down and say, well, you should have known better, because, you know, we're going to stick to our bureaucracy here.
Right.
Despite, you know, this reasonable ask, right? That's one way it could play out, and I understand your sensitivity to that. But regardless, this is something we want, and we think it's important, put it on the list. If they want to, you know, stick to the letter of the law for some reason on this, then that's their business. They can then be on record as having, you know, just thrown aside our request.
It seems also that it may help if HPC denies approval of this, then Bank of America would have to come back to the board. And
Right.
it would strengthen our position somewhat to have that in the language that went to HPC this
Yeah,
time.
I wouldn't downplay anything in the
Right.
letter, is my point.
So could we do it in a way that we said, in addition, we would, or try to separate it, you know, like, we want them to know that we understand the process, but this is how we feel about it.
So maybe there's the bullets.
You know what I'm saying?
And then it becomes text.
Yeah, you know what I'm
After.
saying, Ann? Like something that, because we respond to them and they expect us to understand a certain modicum of how things are done, but
It's
if
like a
there's.
personal narrative at the bottom.
Yeah, or to, furthermore, or we would like in the future, or I don't know, what do you think, Roz?
Do we have other points besides the removal of the blockage on the front? Do we have other additional points that we would be asking?
Removal of the what?
Of the,
obscurement.
sorry?
The obscurement?
Yes,
Yeah.
the obscurement.
I'm sorry, removal of the,
On the Takoma Park Bank sign. Do we have other asks?
oh, the cover on the front.
Do we have other asks?
Other than just repairing whatever. holes are
Repairing,
there.
restoring the limestone.
And, well, the same could hold true if, we could say, we'd like you to remove the existing sign on the west elevation as well. Do we agree with that, on the primary facade,
You
facing
mean
Willow?
the Willow Street sign?
Yeah, and replace it with an ATM, a sign, Bank of America on the ATM canopy. That was something that an architect mentioned that I thought would be wonderful if we had the canopy just beautiful again. And is there a way to do that? I don't know. I'm throwing that out to you guys to see how you think about, should that be, because it's another primary facade. The front is, but so is that. You see them together. So how do you justify it on one side, not the other? Yeah. It's like,
To me, it goes a little too far into doing their redesign proposal for them.
I can't hear you.
I think,
Get-
to me, it goes a little too far into doing their redesign for them.
Oh, they're not
To
going to
me,
do
I can see their logo in a brushed metal pin-mounted letters and logo in a complementary color metal to the building up where they want it. I can see that being an acceptable signage. I
On
can
the
also see
west-
what you described being acceptable. There's nothing up there at all. That's great too, but
And you're talking about the west
there's
side.
different avenues.
Yeah.
Is my point. I don't know about, getting into, well, you should do exactly this. Let's see what they come back with. Because ultimately, they're going to do what, they want to do. They're going to propose what they want to propose, put it that way. So
I-
let's see what they come back with.
I
I like
think-
stressing the point that we know you do a better job than this in
Yeah,
other places. So
Right.
please take the time. It's warranted. This is an important building.
right, here's the data.
Please, take that
Right.
same care that you take in other places with this building here.
Right. That's right.
And see what they come back with. That's kind of the
Yeah.
point.
Well, what's gonna happen is, I don't know if they're gonna come, there has to be a vote, or it's approved. If there's not a vote on the 26th, it's automatically approved. So they're not gonna be able to, I don't think they can postpone it again, no, they have 45 days.
Oh, if the applicant agrees to it, they can.
Okay. So if the applicant agrees,
I mean, and they could put them in a position, you're headed towards a denial. I mean, that's
Right.
usually what happens. You're looking at a denial, do you want to take more
Right.
time to work on your application? And then they agree to the postponement, then the clock stops.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I think that I would imagine they're going to send someone to this meeting, and then the HPC will probably just put strict conditions on it or something. But I think our letter will really help them. And I think this is good.
Mm-hmm. So are you saying not to put this taking off the western?
I was saying,
the western
don't bring
sign?
up the ATM canopy, don't bring up.
The western
Here's what I
sign?
think your signage should be. Just leave the points that we have.
Is one of our points taking it off the west side too? At the Willow
Not
Avenue
yet.
side,
No.
that big one?
Do you want to read where we are? 'Cause I think
Okay,
that's
so
a
the
good-
3 points I have, so it would be a resolution to disapprove the application as submitted with the 3 points. that the box style signage with the white background is architecturally incompatible with the building, that the height of the proposed sign, and we'll talk about
Yeah,
the,
exceeds the Takoma Park
violates the Takoma Park design guidelines, and that we request as part of the signage and rebranding package that they remove the obscurement of the original Takoma Park Bank sign on the Carroll Avenue facade.
Do the.
And repair the
And,
whole-
I'm sorry, and repair the limestone. I have it written here.
Do
I
the
just didn't read
original
it.
bullets get referenced, or are they?
So I could fold it all into one letter. I could say the board votes in as a supplementary statement of the letter dated,
Either way, one or
December
the other,
11th.
but something
Yeah.
to reference the
Right.
other ones.
yep.
And I think maybe to reference sort of our strong concern, you know, outstanding resource, incompatible,
Right,
alterations proposed.
incompatible is strong. So are we okay with always having a big sign on the western facade?
We could, to me, we can be if it's the right signage.
Even though it's a primary facade? See, I have a problem with that. But I
Now
don't
I'm
know
confused,
how.
is that being
That's the
proposed or is that
outlet. Field.
existing?
I'm sorry?
Is that being proposed or it's existing?
No, I'm just saying, just like we're saying to take the limestone
Yeah.
thing off the front, we have
Oh.
a big old sign that's sitting out there on the western side where the architect said she'd rather see that sign gone and on the ATM, you know, essentially,
But then
instead.
Then they'd have no signage.
But they don't have authority to
building.
take it down.
They've got nothing on the front, which is great. That's a win for us,
Yeah.
Mhm.
right? They need to have some signage somewhere.
Right,
So
but
if they
can
put
it be
on the
low?
side where they
Can it
already
be
have the
low?
ATM,
Can it be a low sign?
that's fine.
On the ATM?
What about like a
Potentially.
pylon?
Oh, so
gotta
when
see
you're
what
saying
they come
west,
back
you
with.
mean east?
Yeah,
Here,
let's use the
Willow,
streets.
Willow. I mean
Let's
east,
use the
I mean
streets.
east.
Okay.
Let's use the
Willow,
streets.
Willow. I'm talking about the Willow Street side, sorry, Willow Avenue side, sorry. Yeah, get my directions mixed. The other side, nobody cares about on the
That-
brick side.
That was my understanding.
Yeah. So, so, not include it, or as a wish?
Personally, I wouldn't. I think we have a strong,
Okay,
you know, the more succinct, the better.
yeah.
On a list of 25 items.
Yeah,
People
makes it
just
more
gotta ignore
concentrated.
it.
Well, we
Just
are denying the
get the stuff.
sign, which is going to require a redesign, right? So,
Right.
and the redesign might be much better. So we can look at it that way. Yeah, and hope that
Right.
it is. And maybe we'd feel better about it, you know, when we see it,
Let's hope.
so.
So we'll need a vote, and then my suggestion would be I draft this first thing in the morning and circulate it, and everybody has a
Okay.
chance to say, yes, we captured what we meant to.
Yeah, do you want to, you want us to proof it sort of with numbers, you know, if I need to give you canopy numbers, or, I mean, the.
I don't think we need canopy numbers, we
Height
need
numbers,
maybe
I
a
mean, of the
reference, write a
signage. You
citation,
don't
but,
need it. Okay.
do you want me to read it again?
I'll make
Everybody's good.
Read it one more
I'll make a
time.
motion. I'm not going to try and remember all those points. We'll just pretend I said the thing that you could say by reading that list.
Roz,
Okay.
read it.
That'll be it.
Read it one more
Okay,
time.
so this is what I imagine drafting. As a supplementary letter to the project review of December 11th of 6950 Carroll Avenue, the Facade Advisory Board votes to disapprove the application for this 1927 Beaux-Arts building, an outstanding resource in Takoma Park, with the following considerations. One.
Oh,
that-
and rare, and it's standing, and it's our only example, too, of a Beaux-Arts building, if you could.
Won't they know that?
Oh,
We're
well,
talking to historic preservationists.
I'm not sure who reads it might.
Okay, I'll
It's-
say outstanding and rare. Okay. The first point, that the box style signage with white background is architecturally incompatible with the building. 2, the height of the proposed sign violates the Takoma Park design guidelines. And 3, now I've rewritten this a bit, request the removal of the obscurement of the Takoma Park Bank sign on the Carroll Avenue facade and repair of the limestone. And then I'll include the attachments of the 2 1927 articles, the photo and of the grand opening and the story.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just give us some context, additional weight.
All right, second.
Okay. Third.
Yeah.
Okay.
Vote.
Vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Now, I don't know the.
You're voting yes, Lorraine?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, of course. Yes, of course. Thank
Are
you.
you
for-
able to go to the
Thank-
HPC meeting?
Thank you,
Lorraine?
Phil. I'm sorry?
Are you able to go to the HPC meeting to testify?
Yeah, I can go.
Thank you.
Okay.
It'll be interesting to see how the continuance
Good.
goes. Okay.
Are we done?
I think we are.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank
I
you.
will circulate it in the morning if you get a chance to just give it a quick look. We are a week out tomorrow, so we're in good time to get this in the,
It's good.
Great.
Yeah, we are. We're in very
hopefully
good
it can get
time.
in the staff packet,
Yeah.
if we get it done early enough in
Yeah,
the
it
day.
would.
All right, fingers and toes crossed. See what sticks.
Thank you, Lorraine, very much.
Yes.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you, guys.